Welcome to the Five of Us. We are five outspoken women with close to 150 years of experience as broadcast journalists. We left our jobs on the very same day, and we are dedicated to helping women avoid the many pitfalls common to the workplace. We've heard from hundreds of people recounting tales of woe on the job, and we have done the research, we're putting it all in a book, and we are here to help. I'm Roma Torrey, and along with Kristen Shaughnessy, Janine Ramirez, Vivian Lee, and Amanda Farinacci, we are the Five of Us. Hi, everyone. We're back. It is hard being a woman, and I'm saying that because here we are in March celebrating another Women's History Month, and while we've certainly come far, doesn't it just seem that we still have a long way to go to achieve that equality that allows us to pursue our happiness? I really have to say it's bothered me because it almost seems like we've taken a lot of steps backward in this country. And so I thought it would be time to sort of cheer ourselves up, and in so doing, cheer our listeners and those who are watching us up by sharing stories of hope and inspiration today. So let's start by going around and I want to ask each of you if you can give an example of someone who inspires you and allows you to have your head up and keep your head up and have hope in the world that things will eventually get better. Let's see, Amanda, let's start with you.
Okay. I obviously come at this from a different perspective, given the health issues I've had in the last year. But, 20 years as a New York City reporter, you meet all kinds of people, right? Like I could probably pick somebody from every category that I remember or that inspired me in some way. But probably the most inspiring person for me in recent days is this young woman who is a couple years younger than me. Her name is Maureen Green. And a couple years back, I did a story with the New York City Roadrunners Club about this girl who was preparing to run the New York City Marathon after having gone through, 27 rounds of chemo, and she ran the whole way through. Her last chemotherapy was on a Friday. The New York City Marathon was on Sunday. And I've thought about her like every single day since, even after I did the story, I was very moved because I just think that so much of what women go through is difficult and challenging and ugly and just plain hard. But then when you see somebody doing hard stuff, it makes it easier for you to do hard stuff. And I've thought about her a lot. I actually reconnected with her recently. And I just think like having someone like that out there is, she has two young kids. She had her eggs frozen before she did some procedures and stuff like this. But I just feel like having somebody like that where you can, when things are hard yourself, you think like, oh, this person did it, I can do it too. I think that's really such a blessing and like something that I feel grateful for every day. That there are people who are out there who are like sharing these things about their hard times. And I just feel like we need to hear like more stories like that. I think we need like more Maureen Greens.
All right. Janine, how about you?
Well, I come at this I'm Latina, I'm from Brooklyn, so I need both categories sort of covered. So on my Latina side, of course, like Sonia Sotomayor is the source of great pride for all Latinas. And then she happens to be Puerto Rican and she happens to be from New York City. So, all that it touches, it checks a lot of boxes. She's the first Hispanic on the Supreme Court. She's the first woman of color on the Supreme Court, and she's the first Latina. So, all the above, and she happens to be Puerto Rican. So that's even makes it even better for me. But she has a couple of great quotes. She says, the Latina in me is an ember that blazes forever. And, as a Latina, I think all of us share that same sort of like fire, right? And then another quote from her says, I have never, ever focused on the negative of things. I always look at the positive, and I'm kind of a glass half full person as well. So, I look at something and it's not like, I look at something that I want to achieve and I say, why not me? Like, what does this person have or is doing something great? Like, why can't that be me? Why can't I do that? So that's one person. And the other person from my Brooklyn side, and talking about Women's History Month, is, a trailblazer, Shirley Chisholm. I've done a lot of stories on Shirley Chisholm. And she's an inspiration to all women. She overcame a lot of odds. And in 1968, she became the first Black woman to be elected to the U.S. Congress from Brooklyn, from anywhere, but she's, the first woman in Congress. And she happened to be from Brooklyn, from the Bed-Stuy area. And then she championed racial and gender equality. She tackled issues of poverty. In politics, she said that she faced more discrimination as a woman than as an African American, which is pretty phenomenal. She went on to become the first woman and African American to seek the nomination for president of the United States from a major political party. So that was also, and that was back in the 1970s. She wrote a book, Unbought and Unbossed, and she was the boss. She acted like the boss. She moved like a boss. She got the Presidential Medal of Freedom towards the end of her life. So, she's an inspiration, and she faced a lot of challenges and a lot of discrimination back at the time. And she is somebody to look up to. And when you think of Women's History Month, you think of people like that.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Vivian, you're on.
This might sound corny and a bit of a cop-out, but I've been asked this before, like who was a personal hero, and it's my mom. I can't think of anybody stronger than my mom. She worked alongside my dad, running a 7-day-a-week business, an ice cream store in Canada, where winter can be just a little harsh. And she came to a country where she didn't know the language, and she forced herself to thrive. She got her securities certificate so that she could become an education trustee. In Canada, there are savings plans for post-secondary education, and she wanted to get a handle on that. And when she learned that I wanted to be a journalist on TV, she tried to push me towards writing more. She thought it was more honorable. But then when she saw that I had a knack for show and tell and for talking in front of my class and for getting into trouble, she went whole hog into supporting me. She would drive me great distances to speaking competitions, debate competitions. She was a huge champion. And to this day, I feel like I can tell her anything. So.
You're very lucky. Very lucky. Kristen, you're on.
I love that, Viv. All right. I have two from recent events. And I think the first one, you might not know her name, but you'll understand why I picked her. Her name is Mandy Matney. And she is the reason that the Alex Murdaugh trial, I think, happened. She's the local journalist who kept going, right? That county was ripe with corruption just because everybody was embedded in the act. And she just kept digging and digging and digging. And she did a podcast, and she was, we always say it's all local journalism, right? Like all journalism is local. And this just proved it, because nobody thought Alex Murdaugh would be taken down. And he was. And she was in, all of the trial. But before that, for a year and a half, she just kept pounding the pavement. So I think that she is inspirational. And then the other one is Jamie Lee Curtis. I don't know if you saw her recently, but she was saying how she wasn't going to the dinner for the Oscar nominees because it started at 7 or 7:30. And she said, nothing good happens because dinner's not going to be till 9, and nothing good in my life happens till after 9 o'clock at night. And as someone who got up at 2 a.m. for so many years and loves a dinner still at like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, I could totally relate. I just felt really seen.
That's pretty good. Well, she was rewarded with that SAG award, which surprised everybody, but she gave a great speech. All right, my turn. Okay, Viv, I'm going to have to say my mom as well. And, I'll tell you an interesting story. When we started at New York One, our bosses thought that all of us should get pep talks from big wigs in the industry. And we had a man who was very prominent in the news business talk to us. And afterwards, he came over to me. And I think many people know my mom was a journalist who was a very accomplished journalist. And So this man asked me, how's your mother doing? And I said, oh, she's fine. And then he said, well, she must be on her, her fourth, fifth marriage by now. And I said, what? And he said, yeah, your mom she's such a great reporter. I figured, it would really mess up her home life. And that's what happens. And I was like, you're joking, right? And, my father passed away many years ago, and my mom was on her second marriage, but that was about 15 years after my dad passed away. So anyway, I'm only saying this because I think a lot of women in our business have to sacrifice a lot. And my mom, what she sacrificed was her career to some extent, far more than her family. And I'll give you the inverse of that. Many years ago, my mother was approached by Barbara Walters' father when Barbara was just starting out in the business, and asked if my mom could help Barbara get a job. And so my mom recommended her to NBC, and she got that entry-level job on the Today Show, and the rest was history. So they remained fairly friendly. And so years go by, and Barbara came on my mom's show and in Pittsburgh. And off camera, she sort of confessed that she had sacrificed a lot for her career, and that the career was everything to her. And she kind of regretted that she wasn't there enough for her daughter, and she didn't drive and didn't cook and all that stuff. My mom did it all. And this is why, she is the person I'll always regard as my greatest idol, because she was always there. She was in the kitchen, she was cooking, she was going to all the shows that I was in, all the games that my brother was in. She was always there for us, but also her career, was very important to her as well. And she was able to, balance both of those. We say it's almost impossible to keep all those balls in the air. But my mom managed to do it, and it's a miraculous thing. I can't do it nearly as well as she did, but I do regard her as the sort of the epitome of what a woman should be in this world. So anyway, that's my story. So what books have you guys read, or what outlets can you point to that sort of make you feel a little bit better about being a woman in this country in this day and age? What else inspires you? Let's say, Janine, let's go with you.
Well, I do like to read a lot of books that are inspirational books, a lot of biography kind of things. But, I started to think, and there were like too many to list to kind of figure out which one I wanted to talk about on the podcast. But then I thought about this children's book, and every time I was asked to do a career day or go read to children in a classroom, in a professional capacity to give back to the community, I always pick the same book, and it's called The Dot. It's by Peter Reynolds, and it's about the creative spirit in all of us. It's very inspirational. It's sort of about feeling stuck, and then you get unstuck. So the child is tasked to do a piece of artwork and can't really figure out how to make this work, and tries a couple of different things, and then the creative process flows, and then before you know it, the whole painting after painting after painting comes out. So I think that that those kind of books, I think even as a young child and as an adult, you read it, sometimes we all get stuck and we all have to get unstuck, right? So, and then Peter Reynolds happens to have a new book that just came out this month, and it's called When Things Aren't Going Right, Go Left. So I just ordered that one as well as I prepared for this podcast episode, because I was just like, oh, I love The Dot so much that I'm going to love this one as well. But yeah, his books are inspirational for any age.
That's great. Hey, how about you, Kristen?
I'm going to go order that too, Janine. I have two. I always like Brene Brown's books. I know Amanda shares that with me. Dare to Lead was very helpful a couple of years ago. So I like that, and all her books are interesting. And then the one that I read, I'm actually in a book club now, so I'm reading a lot more since we left work, because we didn't have a lot of time to read books. We were always reading newspapers and just documents and all
Magazines,
that.
Right.
Yeah. So this is one that we read at the end of 2022, but it was Lessons in Chemistry. Loved it. And I didn't think I would just by the title. I'm like, chemistry, whatever, but it's not. And it's also TV based. So that was interesting to me. And she just didn't care what anybody told her how she should be on air. And it worked because she was herself. So it was very, I don't know, it was inspirational in its own way. And I think that was a first novel for that author, and fabulous.
Yeah, I
So it
heard.
has nothing to do with science. It's about the
It
television.
does. She's a chemist. So that's where the chemistry comes in. And she does equations. So it's great because she's such a smart writer too, which we all love. But then she's got this, it's just thick with substance to it. It's just really good. You guys would all like it.
You know, I have a little aside to that, to your book, that you like Lessons in Chemistry. I was looking for positive signs that things are getting better for us women, right? And I saw a statistic that said that 60% of Gen Z girls and young women are now able to code in school. They're getting coding lessons in school, 60%.
I love that.
And, you know, you go back even 10 years, but 20, 30 years, you would never find that high percentage of young women getting into coding. So it shows that the STEM education, that was it science, technology, engineering, and math, is really taking hold at this level finally, that, you know, young girls are getting the same education that and exposure to that higher level of education that the boys have been getting. So that makes me feel much, much better. Okay, Vivian, how about you? What have you been reading or looking at?
Well, I will, I never used to do this, read several books at the same time, because I remember my mom saying, you're just never going to really appreciate the book if you do that. But now I've started doing that. So I'll have like a fiction book going at the same time as a nonfiction book. Nonfiction has been really interesting because I just feel like it's cathartic to read what women's experiences are. And one that I really love, as you can tell from all the Post-it notes, is Rage. It talks about the need for women after centuries, millennia of being told their anger doesn't matter to acknowledge anger. And like, she talks about how she typed in venerable men in a Google search and then venerable women. And the question that came up after she wrote venerable women was, did you mean vulnerable women? And the flames that just went up in her brain, I felt it just reading that passage in the book. So that's one, it's very edifying. And then there's, I'm a huge science fiction fan, and I just discovered Octavia Butler, and her Parable series is just beautiful. She was so ahead of her time. She wrote this decades ago. She talked about a climate crisis that brought on the race wars on Earth. And she talks about one woman's journey trying to just survive, find love, and somehow find fresh water every 20 days or so. So it's like, it really gets me going. And I feel like in some ways, it's not that comforting, but it really is interesting to see how, and Octavia Butler is African-American. She was not given her due when she was around. She has since passed, but a lot of people are now rediscovering her too and saying she really had an eye to the future and called it.
Ah, really cool. I'm reading 2 books at a time too. And you don't get confused. It's you just go back and forth. Sometimes you want nonfiction. Sometimes you want a good story. All right, Amanda, you're on.
I would say my the book that I always go back to, which is so weird because I read it like when I was in 8th grade, is To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah.
Harper Lee. I just feel like you could read it 1,000 times and take a different thing away from it. Like you never really know a person till you walk a mile in their shoes. I feel like there's like so many lessons in there that just can help shape your compass for your life, right? But I think the books that speak to me most, I mean, I could read, like, was just on vacation. I don't even know what I read. I read some fiction book that was like kind of annoyed me, but I read it anyway. And sometimes you just need that mindlessness, right? Like to just distract yourself or whatever. But Kristen and I have talked about this. I am a big fan of Glennon Doyle, Untamed. I think there's something in there for everyone. And I think what's most appealing to me, even if I need to take her in small doses, is that I appreciate so much when a woman just talks about something with real brutal honesty. And I think that if you pick up that book, it reads sort of like little slices of life that she's sort of woven together to explain. It's sort of autobiographical. But what I think is nice about it is she says a lot of stuff that I guess maybe it is where I am at this point in my life, professionally with my kids, where she's not apologizing for her humanity. And I don't think there's a lot of that. There's not enough of that, I think, for women. Like, this shit's hard. Let's just say it's hard, and let's just identify with it and move on, right? Like, and that for me is always a comfort. And so, like, I can't read the whole, like, some books I can just rip through, you know, like in 3 days or whatever. That's a book I kind of take like a little taste of, and then I put it back down and then go back to it. But I have gone back to it a couple of times. I do think, because and she's also very, you know, she's a huge feminist, and she's got all this climate stuff that she does, and it's all good. It's all, everything she's talking about, I think is important and smart and whatever. But personally for me, I just need small doses of that. But I think the takeaway really is just like, don't apologize for being a woman. You know, like, these are the things that we should be celebrating. And I think the book is really sort of chock full of that. So I would recommend, if you want to read that, it's a good one.
Well, coincidentally, I was going to mention that book as well. And I agree with you in small doses, because it comes on strong. But you know what I like about Untamed is that she's all about pursuing your true self.
Right.
And you know, we women spend so much time sort of putting on masks and trying to be a certain person in each situation and circumstance that we find ourselves in. And in the book, it's sort of, she kind of forces you to shed years of indoctrination and all those ingrained rules that have, you know, been drilled into us from the time we were born, how we're supposed to act and how we're supposed to behave. And so many times that's not who we really are. But, you know, as women, I think that the fault that I find myself in, and I'm sure a lot of other women, is that we want to be liked. And so we make compromises in our personalities, in the way we react to certain things, and the way we behave generally. And the book is really all about, you know, sort of finding your true self. And that's not easy, you know, and as you said, not apologizing for who you are. And so I think that the appeal of that book to me is that you have to listen to your inner voice. And I don't know about you ladies, but the older I get, the more my gut tells me what I need to do and how I need to proceed. And I have actually told my daughter that, as you know, she's 27 years old now. And as she gets older, she's sort of glomming onto that as well, that if it feels wrong, if something is just hitting you wrong, maybe you should not do it. No matter what anybody tells you, you know, no matter the advice that you're given or the pressure that you're put under, if it doesn't feel right, don't do it. My gut has helped me in many ways. So I want to ask you guys too, if you have any quotes that you were able to come up with that kind of inspires you to sort of behave in a certain way, or, you know, think in a certain way. Did you guys come up with anything? Because I have a good one.
Well, you know, going back to Shirley Chisholm, because I told you she felt more like, you know what I mean, like it was harder as a woman for her than an African American in Congress. Her quote says, "Tremendous amounts of talent are being lost to our society just because that talent wears a skirt."
Brilliant.
So for Women's History Month goes to show you, like, you know, like, if you like with more opportunities, as we're making history, as we're, you know, trailblazing, the more women that we have up front, the more talent you're going to see, more accomplishments we're going to make, and you know, the contributions to society are going to be, you know, maximized. So, and you know, in New York City, we have the first president female president of NYU, first female president at Fordham University, first female president at Columbia University. So, again, and we could wear a skirt. And we could do the job.
Bravo, bravo. By the way, there was one person I wanted to mention as someone who I'd really, who inspires me, and that is a journalist, Christiane Amanpour. I think it was last week, she did a really hard-hitting interview with the foreign minister of Iran, and he was giving her a hard time. And he was essentially, he was pushing back and almost badgering her, saying she doesn't know how to ask questions, and she was asking the wrong questions, and she wasn't behaving like a good interviewer. And she just deflected and just kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and was trying to nail him down. And she was talking obviously about, the policy in Iran forcing women to wear these hijabs, and then in terms of being inspired by women, by groups of women, those women in Iran have been protesting at great risk to their own lives and the lives of their families. Mm-hmm. And after that one woman was killed while in custody in Iran, Mahsa Amini, I think is her name, because she didn't want to wear the hijab, or she wasn't wearing it correctly. And so all these women have stepped out, inspired by her. And it's just the bravery that these women have, and the sense of integrity and doing this for their daughters is just really, really impressive. So I thought, wow. It's good to be a woman. It's hard to be a woman, but it's very good to be a woman when I see what women power can achieve. Anybody else have a quote they want to share? Because I have one and I can end with. Viv, go ahead.
Yeah, the quote is, "We should do more and talk less."
That's great. All right. Do more, talk less. I agree. A lot of men do more.
One last one I have is from, I know it's sort of opposite because she's like Hollywood or whatever, but Reese Witherspoon, I think, does a really good job. Hello Sunshine is her production company, and she aims at featuring women. I know there's you got Roma, you would probably know this better than me, but there's all kinds of statistics about the number of screenwriters and producers and the numbers are just like vastly inadequate when you compare male to female in this in Hollywood or whatever. She's trying to make a dent in that. Anyway, she has a really cool quote. It says, "One honest voice is louder than a crowd," which I feel like is a good one for us. That's and I just feel like she, I think that she's about a lot of good stuff. I feel like she's just got a lot of good stuff for women. Yeah, bravo. And it's true. They don't like women writers in Hollywood. And Meryl Streep has put a lot of money into trying to even the playing field. So way to go, Meryl. Love
and Gina Davis too. Doesn't Gina Davis also
have the documentary?
Yeah,
right.
That documentary is a really good one because it talks about, I think it's a female director or writer who put her career, she put it on the line, and she lost work because she sought out the truth, which is typically what happens, right? But then the numbers don't lie. The data doesn't lie, right? People do. So
yeah. All right. Well, I'll end with my quote, and it comes from Coco Chanel, the fashion designer, the late great fashion designer, who said, "A girl should be two things: who and what she wants." And that's a lesson I think we have imparted to our daughters, as I've seen them grow into beautiful young ladies. Anyway, great job, guys. Happy Women's History Month to everybody. Let's make some history, right, ladies? And keep it going. Thanks for watching, everyone, and listening to us, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to The Five of Us. We want to hear from you with any questions, ideas, or suggestions for future discussions. Just write to us at the email you see here, and we will be eager to help. Talk to you next time.